Side note, I still don't think elemental resist is worth putting on your external components over mana for the ones that give it, but I'll get to that. Alright, so skip to 6 minutes on the video to see the build and just pause it as I go through everything. This begins my rant though, as usual. Also, go see my previous video where I explain more in depth of what they changed on body enhancement, why it got nerfed. Long story short though, scrap overwhelming HP and scrap all your shield mods. They're all trash now. It does mean you can it opens up to changing it, obviously, which is what I've tried my best to do now in this build. But yeah, it's updated since that last video, and I think improved now since then. The big thing is I got rid of Agony for Psychological Victory. The reason for that is Agony's defense was minuscule. It just increased my 60,000 defense to 65,000, so like a 7.5% increase. It's not worth it. It barely increases your damage mitigation, and it's not enough to justify the barrier strength. Like, I wanted Psychological Victory because that's 10.5% damage modifier that's not affected by your defense, and also can't be nerfed by any enemies, because enemies can actually nerf your defense, but they can't touch that. So that definitely gives you more damage mitigation than the defense from Agony, and it gives you MP recovery, a decent amount of it, which is either better or at least at best makes up for the 8.5% extra mana that Agony does, and makes up for the nerf again that they did to body enhancement, making all your skills cost more and have more cooldown. And then the big thing though is, so here's what you need to know. Your barrier skills are purely based off Ajax stats. Your skill power does not mean a dang thing. So I actually changed my Reactor since then. I now have Tech skill over Dimension skill on it, so that my AoE damage skills can do more damage. Because again, skill power doesn't mean anything for your barrier skills. So you're better off going non-attribute in Tech rather than non-attribute in Dimension, even if your focus is barriers. Also, I learned you can still increase your skill range on the barriers by going skill, what is it called again? Skill extension. I'm looking at it on a different screen when I look at skill expansion. Max it out. I replaced amplification control with that, and I got more range that way. It also means that I don't need range on my Reactor either too, because it maxes out with just that mod. I tested it. I could not get my barriers to increase in any kind of zone other than just a max skill expansion. So yeah, get rid of amplification control, and also you don't need to put range on your Reactor because the skill expansion mod alone is all you need. You get a tiny shield nerf, but honestly, shield's kind of dead on the build now anyway. The little shield you get is just an extra little buff now. It still has over 1,000 shield though, hilariously. So yeah, I got a Reactor with skill cooldown instead, and the to make up the difference. And also the goal is to get a Reactor with skill cooldown and skill cost, both of which to make up the nerf from body enhancement again. Now the big thing is elemental resist. So elemental resist, just to rehash, is trash in my view for the most part. It's weaker than HP and defense can give you stacking those instead, which is why I usually never use, on my other builds besides Ajax, I'm still not going to use a dang little bit of it, because I'd rather just keep my HP and defense and my damage where it's at than sacrifice any of that for elemental resist for any boss. But if you can accumulate about 5,000 of it, that's the most efficient amount for it. Based on the videos you see in the past, I forgot what's his name who did like the testing, but he tested that 5,000 gave you about 20% more damage mitigation against the Colossus fights for their elemental types attacks at least. So here's what I did. I now have a missions. You'll see when I show, or you see when I show the build, I have tabs now. And thankfully I didn't have, I thought I'd have to resocket it all and re-level my Descendant, but I didn't. I had just enough to be able to make this change and just change the, since now you can take a socket off thanks to the update, and so I wasn't nerfing it. But I basically use focus on non-attributes, if I even use it for missions, which is rare anyway. But if you use it for any kind of mobbing, then focus on non-attribute gives you more skill cooldown and makes your tech skills do a lot more damage. But other than that, you don't really use your tech skills hardly at all in Colossus fights on this build. You just use your barriers pretty much. So I got rid of that for no skill power at all to add different toxic, electric, all those. Now I have different elemental resist I stack on each one, and that buffs myself and my berry another 20%.